Welcome to Everlutionary, a podcast about how we can restore balance and heal the world. Every episode of my show, we explore the future of humanity and how we've gotten to where we are today through inspirational stories about healing, science, and mysticism. We'll see how we can reshape our society to create a world free of violence. I'm your host, Hawah Kasat. All right. Here we are. What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning back in. Here we are at episode 10. I can't believe it. It's been 5 months now that I've been out here podcasting. I'm feeling really grateful for all of you that have been tuning in and joining me on this journey. I'm having today a episode that's just me on my own. This is my solo cast. I enjoy doing these. I love just kind of riffing on topics and ideas and having a chance to philosophize and to activate with all of you. This episode, I'm going to be doing a couple of things. I want to give some evolutionary perspective on perfection and the place where I see idealism meeting realism. Some of this is going to connect to my new logo that I just had designed and that I'm releasing with this episode. And then some of this I'm going to be connecting and reflecting on with the upcoming United States presidential election and how we all have to make decisions about imperfect candidates and how voting and how peace building is a marathon and not a sprint. It's kind of like healing. If you broke your arm is not going to heal overnight. It takes time. So that's going to be some of the spirit that I'm going to use to guide my reflections today. Let's get into it. Evolutionary means ever evolving and revolutionizing. And some changes are small and some changes are big. At the beginning of this year, when I started getting this podcast together, I had to decide on a logo. I had gone through 2 months of variations and rounds of designs that were being provided by the graphic designer. I'd sent out various cover photo options and images to friends and colleagues, asking them which were their favorites. I was taking polls. Ultimately, I felt a bit stuck. I wasn't totally sold on any of the choices, and nothing felt like it was exactly right. I'm sure some of you have felt that way before, slightly paralyzed around what decision to make, and not sure if either of the choices were the right ones. But still, you have to choose anyway, because if you don't make a choice, you're stuck with things remaining the way they are. As someone who was the executive director of a nonprofit organization, I've had to get very familiar with making decisions and knowing how to make them fast so that things can keep moving. And sometimes I would even make these decisions knowing that there was probably a better decision or choice out there in the world. But at this moment, I don't have time for more research, and we've been iterating for a couple of months now, so we have to move forward to the next thing. And so with that in mind, knowing that everything can change, I picked the image that has been on the front cover of the first 9 episodes. It wasn't perfect, but I often remember and channel what one of my professors and mentors in college, Coleman McCarthy, used to say to me. He used to say to me that his favorite 5-letter word is start. S-T-A-R-T. Start. Coleman used to encourage me during his classes to not get paralyzed in making a decision. And sometimes he would say you have to go with the best choice ahead of you and know that it's not the end. It's just a step in the direction you want to go. And when I think about and reflect on what he said to me, I understand that finality is a bit of an illusion tied to a Western framework of linear time. When we embrace the circularity of time, we know that things will always come back around again. At some point, you'll always have another chance. That's what makes it a circle. To keep improving, you'll always have another chance. To keep evolving, you'll always have another chance to keep growing. And so I picked the logo. I wasn't thrilled, but I wanted to start recording episodes, and I needed to get inspired by another part of the journey, which was writing and reaching out to guests and interviewing people. And I've been using the logo this entire time, knowing that at some point I'd have to revisit it and try a new iteration. And so here, I'm releasing a variation that I like better than the first one. I feel it's getting closer to what fits me. It's getting, as the Indigo Girls sing, closer to fine. And still even, this new mark isn't perfect. This is an interesting parallel to something that is impacting the global stage right now. In a way, every person's life on this planet, both human and non-human, is being influenced and impacted by the United States presidential election. We are officially less than 2 months away from Election Day. I have to be really transparent and honest about something. From the time I turned 18 until the year 2008, I never voted in any presidential election. Not to date myself too much, but I basically intentionally passed on 3 voting opportunities. The reason I never voted was because I was convinced none of the candidates represented my views. I was convinced that they were just packaging the same violent rhetoric with different branding. I didn't want a Democrat or Republican in office, and so I registered as an independent. I wasn't even sure if I believed in the system of representative democracy. I felt that our system is completely broken and that we need to reinvent new systems. I wanted us to imagine something beyond communism, beyond capitalism. The candidate that I wanted to vote for and support was one that was standing up for demilitarization of the planet. Yes, that's right. Let's get rid of all the world armies and the nuclear bombs. And let's provide universal health care. And let's end global poverty. That was the candidate that I wanted to vote for. I wanted the candidate to protect our coral reefs and rainforests. But I also wanted a candidate to address the critical global wealth disparity. I wanted to vote for a candidate who wasn't throwing money at building tanks and fighter jets. I wanted a candidate who was funding schools and education and investing in books and not bombs. I wanted serious campaign finance reform. I wanted to see money out of politics. And I wanted a candidate who was running a grassroots campaign that was not owned by corporate interests. These all seemed like reasonable requests. My values were to put people first over profit. I know I sound like a huge soundbite right now, but I was the guy who had a free Palestine flag in my house and a free Tibet sticker on my water bottle all the way back in 2001. I was wanting to see the world change, and I was committed to nonviolence as an approach to how we lead, how we govern, and how we live in relationship with each other and the planet. These values that I shared were not values that I found represented by the people who were running for president. And so I just never voted in these elections. I was a holdout. I was an intentional objector, reasoning that my not voting was a political act in and of itself, that this is how I will lay witness and participate. The first time I voted in a US presidential election was when Barack Obama was running for president. Let me be clear. He did not and does not fully align with my values, and nor does he support some of my dreams for how I think we can heal and transform the world. But when he was running for president, something shifted a bit inside of me. I read his autobiography called Dreams from My Father. He had traveled the world, spent time overseas. He was ideologically not a perfect fit, but he got me excited about one thing in particular: introducing a person of color into the highest office in the land. That, in and of itself, was revolutionary. And I knew in my heart, as I was working predominantly with youth of color at that time in Washington, D.C., that he would inspire a generation of young leaders that finally have someone that looks like them in leadership. It would inspire others who are brown or black to know they can aspire to and achieve great heights. Oh, how I wish Barack Obama fought for the single-payer healthcare system option. The public option would have revolutionized healthcare in the United States. And he missed that opportunity, along with so many others. And he continued to use the military as a force around the world to intimidate, assert geopolitical power and influence, and ultimately fall into the same cycles of violence that we still so desperately need to escape. But I finally voted for the not perfect candidate, just like I finally selected the not perfect logo. I finally voted because I felt that him being elected would create enough of a seismic shift that it was worth my participation. And who knows, maybe I was getting a little bit older, and the steadfast idealism of my youth was slowly giving way to the realism that is beaten into one after years of seeing things work and seeing things fail. I saw things fail over and over and over again. I was the director of a nonprofit organization. That's what we did. We often scrambled just to keep the lights on. So I remember myself in my 20s and how I would never compromise my position on certain issues. But by 2008, I started to see how my idealism was actually preventing me from supporting smaller incremental change that would actually help benefit some people. My idealism and desire for perfection in a candidate was actually preventing me from supporting smaller incremental change. I started realizing that I wouldn't be able to have the entire pie. I wouldn't be able to eat the entire cake. But I started to feel that, let me at least have a slice of this pie right now and continue to push and advocate for other slices of the pie that are missing. This can also be an important way to create change. And it was me becoming more realistic. I wasn't giving up on my ideal dreams. I just started to feel that things have to happen in stages. And I could participate in this way while simultaneously advocating for the bigger, long-term vision. One of the things about tucking more and more years under your belt that I've noticed is that I've had to soften and work step by step. For those of us who watched the Olympics this year, social engineering, politics, human development, and behavior change is not the long jump. It is the marathon. It is a long game. And when I was younger, I wanted it all to happen at once. All at once. I wanted it to be climactic, revolutionary. But as I got older, I wanted to take some of the wins when I could get them. That was realism starting to settle in. Maybe I had broken enough bones in my body by that point, and I knew that a broken bone doesn't heal overnight. And the systems we've created are very flawed, and many of them are broken. And if we want to heal them, then it's going to take some immobilization, maybe some surgery, perhaps some physical therapy. If I break my leg, it's not going to heal overnight. And I started taking this perspective into my community organizing work. I took that philosophy into how I was building and running my nonprofit organization. And I started taking that perspective into how I would advocate and stay active in political and social change. I started to realize by this time in my life that I wouldn't be able to have the perfect candidate. I started to realize that I was never going to have the perfect job, that it's not going to be a perfect recipe and a perfect meal, but I'll use the ingredients that I have in my refrigerator right now, and I'll mix them up and make the best dish I can with them. And so, have you been getting stuck with trying to be perfect? Or by making the things around you perfect? And what is it that we're really aiming for? As I started having deeper conversations with friends, I started realizing that my protesting to vote was instead giving another candidate who was even more diametrically opposed to my values and world perspective an opening and a path to victory. This was made clear to me after many late-night debates that went on for hours with friends and colleagues. We were investigating our tactics and strategy and the historical arc of what happened in the year 2000. It was the turn of the millennium when Al Gore was running off against George Bush in the US presidential election. I didn't vote because I was on the philosophy that both parties are the same. There's no difference between the Republican and Democratic parties. That's what I used to say. You've heard that line of reasoning before. Maybe. But that falls into the binary trap. That falls into the binary trap of thinking. Absolutely, the parties are probably more similar than they are different. They are both owned by corporate interests. But there is nuance. If all those who shared my no vote protest because the entire system is flawed rationale, if all of us actually voted for the candidate that more closely resembled our views, it's very possible and likely that that election would have turned out much differently. And instead of George Bush winning, we would have seen Al Gore as the 43rd president of the United States. And I think if that happened, we'd be living in an entirely different world today. If Al Gore won that election, then we may have seen a much greater commitment to fighting climate change. And we may all be driving in renewable electric cars right now, in solar energy and wind turbines, and research into how to harness the energy the ocean waves may have already made obsolete fossil fuels today. The axis of global leadership and our work to address climate change would have been one of the seminal issues of the year 2000, and the turn of the millennium would have seen real leadership on this issue. Remember, this was the main thing that Al Gore cared about. He was a pioneering thinker who made the documentary film An Inconvenient Truth. He listened to and mined the data of climate scientists who were sounding the alarm bell. And he was not a climate change denier, as George Bush was. That was part of Al Gore's platform, back before people were even talking about climate change. But because I believed the two-party system was fundamentally flawed, and Al Gore and George Bush were basically the same party, I chose not to vote. I chose not to vote because Al Gore didn't represent the type of big change maker that I wanted to see elected. And he didn't speak to all the other issues I cared about. I didn't vote because he wasn't the perfect candidate for me. And right now, I want to speak to all the young people and shoot, even all the older people who are tuning in and listening. If you're not sure if you're gonna vote because Kamala Harris doesn't check off all the boxes, or maybe you're not in the United States and in your home country, you're between candidates and election cycles and are in a similar situation where you're feeling neither local or national candidates that are running fully represent your views. This is happening all over Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Absolutely. All of us can relate, no matter where in the world we are. We're stuck with politicians who don't speak to us or inspire us, and so we just remain neutral and don't get involved. But this is the behavior that I think we need to investigate. Absolutely, Kamala Harris has not said anything in her campaign to make me feel confident that she will put an end to the genocide of Palestinian people, which is one of the most important issues to my heart right now. You are absolutely right if you feel that way. I feel that way too. And it breaks my heart to say this, but we're not gonna win it all. If we think we are going to get everything in one shot, it's not going to happen. Absent of full-on cataclysm, that's just not how social change works. Nobody's going to be perfect. No candidate is going to represent everything we want, or you want, or I want. But which candidate speaks more to the world, to the future, that we at least want to take a step towards? And that's my question. That's my curiosity. That is my investigation in this dialogue. We might need to have a moment to weigh the ways that idealism and realism intersect. Where do idealism and realism collide? And we need to ask the hard questions around how our idealism can keep us and prevent us from achieving our long-term goals. Because we're so set on the full long-term goal that we don't see the small baby steps that are required to get there. As the famous quote, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one single step." Keep in mind that if you are unwaveringly committed to perfectionism, even in your political candidate, that you are falling into the trap of binary thinking. When we hold onto perfection as the goal, it can also make us feel hopeless in believing that anyone will ever satisfy or live up to our grandest dreams. If you hold on to perfectionism, then you'll always be let down. And idealism is the impossible, as idealism is a moving target. What is ideal today in 2024 will not be what is ideal in 2040 or what is ideal in 2065. But if we can leave things just a little bit better than we found it, then we get out there and we vote, we advocate, We are not spectators, but engaged participants. We have the hard conversations. We put ourselves out there, even when we're worried we'll lose our social media fans, even when we're worried that we'll lose concert sale tickets, even when we're worried we'll get blowback for saying how we really feel. These are all the ways that we have been hampering our own progress. We are self-censoring because we're worried about what will happen if we say something. But the bigger question we may be needing to ask ourselves is, what will happen if we don't say anything? What will happen if we don't exercise our right to vote? The very rights that people died fighting for. And around 50% of United States citizens will not vote in this year's presidential election. Think about that. Half of the eligible voters in the country will not cast a ballot this year. One of the most important elections in the history of the United States. So yes, neither are perfect candidates. But as you've heard over and over again on my podcast here, the one existential piece that is clear for me is the uplifting of the first woman to become president of the United States. Can you imagine how that would inspire an entire generation of women? How that would severely upend and help to dismantle the patriarchy that has never seen a woman hold this highest office in the United States? How her winning in this election cracks the glass ceiling in tangible and spiritual ways that is sorely needed for our species? To uplift women and trust them with leadership. So if you want to say, I don't want to vote for either party or candidate, you do you. Maybe just be specific about what you want and who you would vote for. But I urge you not to make sweeping, generalized statements, such as, they're all the same, or my vote won't matter, because that actually is not real and representative of the choices before us. They're not all the same. That's black and white thinking. In the dance between idealism and realism, idealism is the soaring bird. It flutters on visions of a brighter dawn, where hope paints the skies with hues of justice and love. It whispers of what could be, igniting passions that spark movements, urging us to reach for the stars. We must forever hold on to our idealism. But if we grasp it too tight, we may not actually be able to make steps toward birthing the new reality. Realism stands firm like an ancient oak tree, its roots grounded in the soil of experience. It reminds us of the weight of the world, the complexities woven into the fabric of life. Realism speaks of practical steps, of navigating the jagged edges of our shared reality, urging us to see not just the beauty, but the struggles that shape our path. Together, they create a harmonious symphony. Idealism offers the melody, sweet and aspirational, while realism provides the rhythm, steady and wise. In this balance lies the power for social change, a bridge between what we dream and what we can achieve. The bridge between the two invites us to envision a world transformed while taking the steps one by one toward that ultimate goal. Embrace both the soaring and the steadfast, the vision and the reality, forging a path toward a future that is not just imagined, but lived. Thank you, friends, for tuning into another Everlutionary episode, our 10th episode. I'm so grateful that you've been here and connecting. I'd love to hear from you. So if you're inspired, send me an email or shoot me a direct message on social media and let me know what topics you want to hear me talk more about. Let me know if there's any guests that you'd love to have on the show or hear from when I'm in my interview format in conversation. I'm looking forward to continuing to grow a community where everyone feels like they're able to engage and participate. I hope this is a benefit to you and your time. I hope these episodes create some inspiration in your life. Starting this month, I launched an online course called The Heart of Nonviolence. I've also got a men's retreat and a silent meditation retreat in December, both happening in Massachusetts. If you want more information, you can visit my website. All the links are in the show notes. And as always, if you're inspired and you want to help me crack the algorithm, please make sure to rate this podcast and drop a little 1 or 2 sentence review, a couple of words about why you listen and why you tune in, and then share this with a friend and help pass this along to other people. I'm really grateful for all of you for tuning in. Please remember to continue to be kind to each other. We're moving into a very palpable time right now, and there's a lot of polarization, and some of the best ways we can engage right now is just to drive a little slower, be a little more gentle, tell somebody you love them, be kind, be gracious, listen to each other, and let's all do our part in bringing a little healing and bringing a little bit more light into the world. I hope. Everlutionary, restoring balance and healing the natural world, is brought to you by me, Hawah Kasat. If you would like to find out more about me and my story, head to hawah.us. That's HAWAH.US. And then make sure to search for me in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening. Stay in touch. Peace.